Hey, thanks for checking out my channel. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and this is a review of Bros. I have COVID, and I am still reviewing movies, so that's why my voice sounds nasty. I suppose this video really should be sponsored by Paxlovid, which is it's doing a pretty good job. So, if you get the COVID, get the Pax. It's made a turnaround for me. So, I feel better in today's videos. Bros. Well, first of all, I'm a blind film critic, so I watched this with audio description on Peacock. I know who the leading actors are. Everybody knows Billy on the Street, Billy Eichner. Whether you're a fan of his or not, that's a completely different question. But I actually didn't even realize. I actually thought it was like a different Luke McFarlane that came along. I didn't realize it was Luke McFarlane from all the way back when I used to watch Brothers and Sisters. I just kind of thought like that Luke McFarlane just kind of went away. But it's kind of interesting to see that his career sustained so long that now he's co-starring in a feature like this. So, good for him. So Bros is directed by Nicholas Stoller, who also did Neighbors, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Into the Greek. So he's used to doing sort of raunchy comedies. And there's a bit of that in here, but most of it is that Billy Eichner has decided to create a film that is groundbreaking in and of itself by bringing in all LGBT cast in on the film. So you have everybody from Bowen Yang to Jim Rash, Dot Marie Jones, just a whole bunch of people sprinkled throughout the cast that represent one of the letters in the alphabet army. And on top of that, it's supposed to be this first wide release, first studio-supported gay romance comedy. And that's how it breaks into the mainstream. In the film, Billy plays Bobby, a big stretch for him, who is a podcaster, who is really into gay history, and is also going to become sort of like, I guess you could call him the curator of this LGBT history museum. And he's single and sort of unabashedly so, but you get the idea that maybe it's not so unabashedly, but he just owns it. The fact that he's never had a serious relationship. And then you have Luke McFarlane, which is the guy he ends up running into, who's this handsome lawyer. And the two at first don't seem to work, but then they kind of do, and that sort of is what the film is about, is these two in their relationship and him navigating it. For a little while in the beginning, you don't get to see Luke McFarlane's Aaron. You sort of see Bobby navigating his own life, so it's not an equal. Aaron is not like really a co-lead. He just kind of becomes one once he becomes introduced. And it plays out like a typical romantic comedy, hitting a lot of the same beats, but just hitting them in a way that represent gay culture and gay relationships and different choices. And it's very, very unabashedly gay. It is very unapologetically so, and it does not care. And I think that's what's hilarious about this whole thing, is I was thinking about how do I review Bros, because on one hand, Bros likes to say it's the first mainstream uh, comedy to come from a studio, the first wide release, the first major release with all of this, with all the trappings of having, gay leads, gay romantic comedy, gay cast. But at the same time, I don't think it's accessible, and it's not that it's not accessible to me, since I'm fine. I identify that way, so we're good. But I think somebody had to sit back and realize at some point, would anybody not in this really be choosing this and watching this? And I think that's why Bros didn't do well at the box office. Is there are just some scenes that when you go, that's a bit much. It kind of, I know that when you go and get Nicholas Stoller instead of somebody, I don't know, like he's watching, for example, he's watching You've Got Mail at one point in the movie. Okay, so what if Billy Eichner had made a gay romantic comedy that was closer to You've Got Mail instead of something like with the same sort of frat boy humor that Nicholas Stoller brings to his movies like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Neighbors? What would that film have looked like? Would that film feel more accessible? Would that film feel more just like a straightforward romantic comedy instead of so much almost like you're trying to put everything into one film? Like no one is ever going to ever let you make another film ever again, so you have to make it with everything, with the context of everything. It not only is it romantic comedy, but it's also like a gay history lesson, because his character is running this gay history museum, and he takes a lot of time to just explain all of these little moments in gay history to people who may not know anything about it. It's like Billy thinks this is one shot in reaching a straight person, and giving them some sort of dose of gay history. His podcast is like the 11th Brick at Stonewall, and he talks about the Stonewall riots, which is a huge moment in gay history, but it's one that maybe not a lot of just regular people walking in would know. There's a rather large subplot about him trying to get funding to have a wing in the museum devoted to Lincoln as the first gay president, because of letters that were written between him and a couple men, and some historians that have looked into that and tried to figure out, did he have relationships with these men, and just lots of references. Like anytime he can make a reference historically, he does so. But on the other hand, this is why I find this film so odd to talk about and confused, is that Billy addresses it directly. Through his character of Bobby. Bobby is just the kind of gay man that has been told his entire life that he's a little too gay. He tells his story about how when he was doing music theater that he would be limited in the kind of roles because of his walk and his voice, and then he tried to do journalism, and then his teacher told him that his voice was too gay to read the news. So everybody has always tried to tell him to dial it back, and he started writing. So then he hid his voice, and he hid who he was, and he just wrote, and he wrote books. And even then, the publishers told him there was no audience for his stuff. So it's sort of an interesting narrative, because I think one of the things that the film could have used less of is that narrative, is having Billy walking around educating people about gay history, but also it's such a huge part of who his character is. It's almost like saying you would have had to rewrite Bobby as a character. Um, because on the other hand, you have Aaron, who is pretty cut and dry. He just kind of comes in. He's pretty much just expected to be the cute one, you know, the hot one or whatever. And there isn't much depth to him. We find out that he's a lawyer that doesn't necessarily enjoy his job that much. And there's a little thing that there's a trick to that. I don't want to reveal everything, even though I don't think a film like this has spoilers. But he has dreams of doing something other than being a lawyer, but his character is not nearly as deep or rangy or anything like that. His character is less complex and actually fits a lot more into a romantic comedy mold than you might assume. Meanwhile, Bobby has a lot of issues with, not believing that he's worth. He has a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-worth issues that have compiled, which are fine. That's a lot to talk about in a film. But at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a comedy. And not just a comedy, but a Nicholas Stoller comedy. I'm not really sure that all of it gelled necessarily the way that it was supposed to. Like, sometimes this film goes for the more emotional moments, and it also goes for these out of left field raunchy moments, and they're all sort of in this film. And I think about this film and I go, the fact that this was aimed at a mainstream audience, and we say that, that it was a wide release that was meant for everybody. It doesn't feel like it's an accessible film, and it also doesn't feel like, if I'm being really honest, that Billy Eichner really tried to make this an accessible film for everybody. I don't think he cared. I think he actually really was just trying, this was his shot, and he was taking his shot. Somebody was giving Billy Eichner a wide release, an opportunity to make the film he wanted to make, and he just made the film he wanted to make. And calling it mainstream or for everybody or wide or the same kind of comedy that we've seen before, anything like that, is not really true. Bros is a lot more groundbreaking, but for totally different reasons. I don't know that I really have any problems with it. I know I'm talking a lot like I do. I have more problems with how the film is marketed than how the film actually is. I think if the film had just tried to not hype itself as being some, like, look at us, we're the same thing as The Hangover. It's like, no, you're not. You're not the same thing as The Hangover. Arguably, The Hangover didn't really have romantic comedy angles to it. So, I guess probably the biggest comp could be if you look at Nicholas Stoller's Forgetting Sarah Marshall and this, because there were some romantic comedy elements in that. You could maybe compare those two. I don't know. It still feels like he wanted his Nora Ephron moments, but he wanted his Nicholas Stoller moments. There are plenty of times here where Billy Eichner dials it back and has these moments that are not raunchy at all, and they're just nice moments. And there are plenty of references to, like, the Hallmark Christmas movies, which are all hilarious. I love the polyamorous Hallmark movie. But there are plenty of references in here that that let me know that Billy did really want to make a romantic comedy. But at the same time, he also wanted to make one that was edgy, and he wanted to make one that was unabashedly gay. And all of that worked very well. But to try to act like that this was ever made to be like one of those breakout $100 million films like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I was never going to happen with this. There's a lot in this film that I think a couple of straight dudes walking into a theater would have been like, nah, nope, and just would have left. I think there are a lot of open people who would have gone into the film and been like, okay, so I'm learning more about gay culture. Cool. But it's got this whole element to it, though, where it feels like it's teaching people gay culture. Like it wanted those people to be there so that they could learn something. Because obviously, LGBT populations don't need to be taught their own history. Not really. I mean, maybe like a little bit, but maybe there's some stuff that they don't know. But so that part is in there, obviously, for those that come along that are not part of that. It's a very odd film. I liked it, though. I know I have a lot to say about it, but I liked it. I think my problem is just more with how the film is marketed and structured that way than necessarily the film itself. I think Billy is charming in this. I actually don't normally like Billy Eichner, and I really liked him in this. I thought Luke McFarlane was really good in this. The supporting cast were all really good. There are a couple scenes that don't work for me just because they're like out of left field and nobody would have ever done that in real life. And there's one in particular where I was just like, come on, Billy. Even the scene itself, even him saying it, and even though he's like standing up for it and he's trying to make it seem like it's a good thing, it's kind of weird. There's a scene where he talks about how his parents took him when he was 12 to see a gay show where like there were like 7 men standing on stage and they were all like naked, and then they like started like making out and pretending to have sex and stuff, and it's like, you're 12? I don't know that this is like the best story, like my thing was like, at 12 your parents took you to that at 12? I mean, there's something to be said for representation, absolutely. His thing was coming out of an argument about like, when can you start teaching kids about gay history? But I don't know that his story about 7 flaccid penises is necessarily gay history. I think teaching people maybe about Stonewall riots and AIDS history and specific gay icons throughout history would be a much better use of that than making an argument that going to see a live theater production like that at that age is what you're talking about. Because I think that kind of killed that argument for me. There's the one scene that didn't work for me. I felt like he didn't understand that it was a bit much. And I don't think there were many people in the audience that were like, yeah, I would take my 12-year-old to that. I don't think there were gay people that were like, yeah, I'd take my 12-year-old to that. I don't think there, I think he was just so out of touch with that statement that, it's so weird. If I was on stage in that production, I looked out and I saw a 12-year-old, I'd be like, what the fuck is a 12-year-old doing in this show? But it's so weird. it's so weird that that was his moment. And of course, you know, he apologizes for it later on, but it's like, I, why? Anyway, overall, I think Bros is hilarious, but I think Bros is, if Bros will either be for you or it won't be for you. And you just have to try it out and see if it's for you. If you end up turning it off, then you end up turning it off. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But I hope you stick with it. I think there's a lot of good stuff here, and especially if you just want to learn more. It's weird that this is an educational film, but it is. I didn't expect it to be. When I walked into it, I was like, oh, the guy from Forgetting Sarah Marshall teamed up with Billy Eichner to make a mainstream gay comedy. Oh, shit, it's educational also. Fun. It has a lot of great moments in it, a lot of really funny moments, a lot of zingers and one-liners. It's just maybe not as accessible as it claims to be. Sorry, that's my only thought about Bros. But I thought the audio description was really good. So unfortunately, it's on Peacock. So I got like the first 2 credits, and then I got kicked into something else, and I don't know how to turn that off. So I have no idea who did the audio description, but it was fine. Yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna give Bros an A-. Yeah, all of that to get to an A-. I really did. I actually liked the film. I know I had a lot of thoughts on it, but they're not thoughts that were really necessarily about making the film bad. I think they were just choices. But yes, it was not the film that I expected, but I enjoyed the film that I got. So, but I think when you tell people that this is the film they're going to get, and then you give them something else, I don't think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, cool. So I think that explains the box office. I think that's where I was going with this. I don't know. I have COVID. Fuck it. These days have been very weird. Anyway, please subscribe. I do reviews while I have COVID. That's how committed I am. And I'm 10 away from 100, which is my year-end goal. And I feel like I can do it. Just 10, guys. I need 10 more people. I also have a website, macmovieguy.com. You can go to the audio description project, adp.acv.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it, and theadna.org. And I will review something else for you guys, and see you on the other side.